Hello.
Is out enjoying the beautiful weather this morning.
Oh, once the shade hits my picnic table in the backyard, I'm moving outside.
Yeah.
I did my solid waste meeting outside yesterday, most of it. It was really nice. Made you not feel like you were stuck in an office.
I have a couple meetings that we do outside, which is wonderful right now.
Which one are those?
The Mayor's Trails Committee meeting, actually, we meet outside at Rotary Park, and that's very pleasant when it's not freezing. We had a couple of very cold meetings this winter. Yeah.
Gabriel said he'd be just a little bit late. Hi, Christina. Busy lady? We're all busy.
Very busy. And yeah, I had some tax questions submitted about an hour ago, but I emailed the commission for anyone who hasn't seen that.
Oh,
Just read
I don't
that.
think I saw that. I saw Elizabeth Tubbs' email, but I don't think I saw anything about tax. I'll look on my phone.
Well, it's about the funding of the healthcare tax. So I did provide you guys with some information, and we can.
Oh, okay, that's important to look at. So when did you send that out?
Oh, 25 minutes ago.
Oh, okay. That gives me an idea.
And I sent out the resolution, the voter information pamphlet that was passed at the same time. The ballot title was approved. Just giving you guys some information.
Well, I'm seeing the things from Elizabeth Tubbs, but I'm not seeing anything from you.
I'll report it to you, Mary.
Oh, I think I found it. Did you send it to Elizabeth as well?
I think I just responded to the county email.
Okay, I think.
It was 12/16 and it was to the county email address.
Yeah.
12.
We can certainly, it came in, obviously, we just got EMS's letter, so it was in response. So we can certainly talk about it today.
No, I don't. 12/16, I don't have anything that came in at 12/16. Isn't that weird? So yes, would you resend it to me, Christina? Because I think that's important for me to be able to see.
I will.
Oh, here it came up.
So I just re-forwarded it to you, Mary. It might show up in your inbox here pretty quick.
Okay.
Assuming the email's working.
Here's the Christina Sloan part. Some additional information for today's workshop given here. Okay, it looks like we're here. At least we have enough people to start. The only person I think is missing is Evan. Okay. I will open this meeting of the Grand County Commission regular meeting. The date is Tuesday, September 21st, 2021. Present are Commissioners Jacques Adler, Tricia Dean, Sarah Stock, Gabriel Wojtek, Kevin Walker, and myself. We also have staff, Christina Sloan, Chris Baird, Quinn Hall, and Mallory Nassau. We will open up with the workshop on mineral lease state PILT payment in lieu of taxes, Office Forest Service, SRS, rural health care tax, and transient room tax mitigation. allocations. I'm going to hand this over to Chris Baird.
Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome.
Share my screen real quick here. Okay, so what we're looking at here, what I want to go over first is just the projections for these different revenue streams that are going to be entirely distributed to other entities. First off, we've got two different mineral lease revenue sources. And these are both from statutory provisions. One's distributed by the Utah Department of Finance, and then the other one's distributed by the Department of Workforce Services. And so here is a little bit of history. We've got 2019 figures. You can see that the mineral lease dropped quite a bit in 2020, and that was, I think, mostly due not only to declines in production, but also there was quite a period of time there, almost half a year, where a lot of royalties were deferred or just canceled. And so I think that represents a pretty big drop in 2020 in mineral lease. However, relative to 2020, the mineral lease is picking back up again a bit. It's running year to date about 171% relative to 2020. So I'm projecting that it's going to come back up, not entirely to where it was in 2019, at least on this Department of Finance side. What I see on the DWS side is that it's seems to be staying about the same as it was in 2020. So these are, the formula, how this is dispersed is different between the two, and so I'm not exactly sure why one's going up and the other's kind of staying the same. So I increased one relative to year to date, and then the other one as well, but it didn't appear to be going up.
So Chris, other than the two that you just talked about and the stuff that comes via CIB, are there any other mineral lease funding streams that come to the county?
Well, state PILT is also from federal mineral lease.
Okay.
And so it's an allocation. And so the state actually uses federal mineral lease royalties to pay us their payment in lieu, which seems like a little funky to me.
Yeah, but the amount for the state PILT, I thought, was based on things happening on state lands. Is that correct?
That's right. But they do use mineral lease to pay it. So it is also technically mineral lease. And so it has the same kind of rules about it.
Okay,
but anyway, the state PILT is not relative, though, to oil and gas activity. It's relative to a formula based on, I think, population and the amount of acres in a county that the state holds.
Okay, so it's not affected by production going up and down.
No, I don't think so. There's a separate revenue stream that we get for royalties on state lands, but the county takes those royalties directly into the general fund. And they're not mineral lease money, not federal mineral lease, it's state mineral lease. And so those royalties we get from SITLA are a different thing and are not a part of this. It's rough, it varies a lot over the years depending on what's happening, but that's not a part of this process.
Okay, thanks.
So we've got those two mineral lease. I've got the state PILT, which is, formula based on population, et cetera. So it doesn't really change much over time, and I'm expecting, we got 307,000 in 2021, so I'm just going to, say that we'll get about the same next year. Then the secure rural schools is a small amount of money and doesn't seem to change much either. I'm not sure how to really project it. It changes a little bit, but it's not much, and so I don't really have direct evidence of what these payments are at the moment, but it's roughly about that much. And then the healthcare sales tax went into effect in 2017. So you see in 2019, we got about 2.1 million. It dropped a little bit in 2020. We were expecting much worse. If I switch over, can you see this new spreadsheet that I switched to?
Yes.
So, we were projecting, when we did the 2021 allocations, we were projecting 2020 to close out at 1.56 million. And so it came in substantially higher than we were projecting by about $500,000. So that was good because we were expecting kind of catastrophe at the beginning of the year, and it ended up catching up almost with 2019, but not quite. And then 2021, this is my projection for 2021, which is in the 50+% growth over 2019. So, almost $1 million more projected in 2021 over 2019. And then 2022 is about 7% growth, so over 2021, and so anticipating a significant decline in the rate of growth, because our growth rate right now is very high. Like I say, since about July 2020, sales tax have climbed over 50%. And so I'm expecting some normalization to occur in 2022, and the average growth rate for this tax is 6 to 7%. So I expecting a major drop in growth. Maybe that will happen, maybe it won't. I don't know. But 7% is a pretty decent projection, I think, for growth in 2022. So all the figures. So this is kind of the pool of the totals, and then when I scroll over to this budget officer recommendation, each one of these fields is a formula that's drawing off those totals and then is calculated based on the percentage that we have here. And so we can kind of change this around on the fly if we need to. I highlighted these two rural healthcare sales tax provisions because, as I indicated last time, I'm recommending that we send the disproportionate share straight to the state instead of routing it through Canyonlands Healthcare SSD. And so the formula for these is basically subtracting this $330,000 off the total and then calculating what 60% and 40% are of that. And we can change this formula if we decide to do something different. But that's where it's at right now, is that this $330,000 for the disproportionate share match is recommended to go straight to the state, and then the remainder after that is split 60-40 between Canyonlands Healthcare and EMS.
So when appropriate, I had an idea for doing that a little bit differently, which I'm hoping will make everybody happy. So when we get to the correct part of the meeting.
Maybe I'll just go over everything real quick first, give the overview, and then we can start discussing tweaks. Is that all right?
Yeah.
So anyway, at this point, Canyonlands Healthcare's only distribution would come from the rural healthcare sales tax, projecting about 1.75 million, which is what they requested, except for the carving out the dish part. And then EMS, recommending giving them half of the state PILT again, and then 40% of what remains after the dish payments deducted from the total of the sales tax. So that's that amount, 1.16 million or 1.17 million. They did request the equivalent of 50% of the sales healthcare sales tax, which would be about 1.627 million. So you can see that there's a disparity between their total and that 1.627 million. A big part of the problem that we face is that the healthcare sales tax, is, for one, it's a big number, it's a lot of money, and it grows a lot faster than all these other revenue streams. And so as the healthcare sales tax grows, it becomes harder and harder to actually meet that 50% because the other revenue streams don't grow proportional to the healthcare sales tax, and the money, associated with these other funding streams isn't sufficient to actually make up that difference and keep other districts financially solvent. So that's just a note that I wanted to point out. And maybe we can talk about if there's some way to deal with that. So the rec district, I'm proposing 23% of the Department of Finance mineral lease, 65% of DWS mineral lease. And I'm proposing a transient room tax contribution for youth sports and youth grant, accelerated sports grants, 137,000. And then 30% of state PILT. They requested about 452,000 total, and this is about 427,000 projected. The school district, I highlighted this number because there's an error in your packet. I accidentally had this at 100%, and it really should be 50%, so that dropped their total down a little bit by $14,049. But that was kind of a carryover mistake from last year. We're locked in at this 50-50 split between transportation district and school district, so that's not even something we can change at this point. That's locked in. And then
and why is it locked in? Is it
so we make the legislature opens up the SRS allocations every once in a while. I think the last time they did it in 2013, but they haven't done it since then. And you can only change that split when they reopen it at the federal level. And so whatever your last election was for how it gets split up, you're locked in on that until they reopen the process again.
So what would happen if, like, the special service district, got dissolved or something like that? You just wouldn't be able to use the money?
We could probably take it straight into the county's budget because it's for roads. 50% for roads. Then obviously the school district's not going to go away.
Okay.
So I think that we could probably take that money straight into the county's roads budget as long as it went to road projects.
Okay, so we've got flexibility as long as it goes to roads.
Yeah, pretty sure. But it's only a tiny bit amount of money, so not really a major player in this thing. So state PILT 30% for rec, also total 426, 963. Then the school district. In 2021, we significantly increased their contribution. As you can see, in 2019, they only got the SRS payment. And 2020 as well. And then in 2021, we jumped it up quite a bit, added 20% state PILT, 50%, or 20% state PILT, 10% Department of Finance mineral lease. And so kind of kept that the same recommendation for 2022. In the transportation district, this district is what we send to the transportation district, we're expecting mostly to go towards stormwater projects, and so it's really an amount of money that's going to go towards offsetting the cost of those projects. And so whatever we don't send them in mineral lease, we'll have to pick up ourselves, either by way of financing or general fund contribution. So this money does actually help the county out quite a bit in terms of lowering the cost of stormwater projects from the general fund's perspective. But, in the past, before we changed their charter over to allowing them to participate in stormwater projects, we had enough money for roads projects because we passed the optional transportation tax, and so we virtually defunded Transportation Special Service District in 2019. But then in 2020, we rewrote their charter so that they could use it for stormwater and then started funding them again. So, the amount of money that we send them in mineral lease is going to be relative to how much we prioritize stormwater projects. And then solid waste, I'm recommending 10% of the Department of Finance mineral lease, 35% of DWS mineral lease, and a fair.
Did we lose Chris? Sounds like it.
Yeah, his audio.
I wonder if he can hear us.
Well, you can see the cursor moving, but I don't think
Let me
you've
call
got
it.
his audio.
Oh, Evan Clapper has joined the meeting. Commissioner, welcome. Good
Thanks,
to see
I've been
you.
there for a bit. Yeah, I
Yeah,
had trouble
I just,
finding the login.
that's always fun, isn't it?
Yeah,
Mine goes to my calendar now, so it's really easy. I just go to my calendar and click on the event and the login shows up. Don't have to hunt for the email anymore.
yeah. It looks like there were some chats and they popped up and went away, but I wonder if that's,
It
Chris?
says he has to reconnect. His phone dropped the call, and I don't have audio on my desktop to let you know. That was Mallory.
gotcha.
So,
When I went to this conference last week, there was these people that had this new technical gadget. It was called Remarkable. Has anybody seen that? Where it's quite amazing. They take notes and then they just turn it into text. It can read your own handwriting, but I wonder if they could deal with my spelling, that's another issue. But it was really neat. All these people were taking all these notes and it's been transcribed.
Can you hear me, Mary?
Yes, you're a little tinny, but we can hear you.
All right, so something happened with my landline. I can't stay connected, so I moved myself.
It's difficult to hear you.
All right, can you?
It was better for a second, then you disappeared.
All right, I need to hold my phone right up to my face, I guess. All right, where did I cut out?
You're talking about the solid waste, and you were on transient room tax.
Okay, so the solid waste district proposing about $103,000 increase their contribution to make their request at $500,000.
Your screen share is gone.
Reshare your screen, I think.
Oh, sorry. Gotten all.
Fun, huh?
All right, here we go. Okay, so that's the overview. And so now we can discuss what ideas anybody has for alterations.
Before we do that, do you want to quickly review just the restrictions on the different funding sources, like what they can and can't be spent for?
Okay, so transient room tax, this would be coming out of the impact mitigation side. And so this money can go toward law enforcement, search and rescue, solid waste. And so, the amount of money we spend for this particular transient room tax, it does cut into our bottom line, because we could also use the same money to offset our general fund expenditures. But, I think that even with this contribution, we'll probably be okay. I mean, it's quite an increase, and it will cut into our bottom line. But it's an eligible expense, solid waste. It can also go towards emergency medical services as well. The DWS or the mineral lease payments, can go toward really any legitimate governmental use as established in the authorizing resolutions and or ordinances for each of these districts. And so, same with state PILT. And so the limitations would be relatable to the charter of each district. But I think that, all the expenses that the districts have are eligible for PILT and mineral lease.
So for those three funds, then there's no like subject matter restriction. It's just, it can't go to our general fund. We have to send it to some kind of special service district or other entity.
Yeah, we can't take it in for general operations. Otherwise it would offset the amount that we get in federal PILT. And so we don't want to do that. And then let's see if there's any others that have other restrictions. I think that covers it really. And
you already mentioned the secure rural schools where
that one's
between roads and schools, and we don't have any choice about that.
Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to discuss, I guess there's been some recent emails about the healthcare tax and the split between EMS and the healthcare special service district and hospital dish payment. And one of the sources of disagreement is that, as I understand it, is the EMS and possibly also the healthcare special service district are making more conservative projections about sales tax revenues. And so maybe if they're making significantly lower projections, we could say it's a 40-60 split until taxes hit the level that they're projecting. So they get everything they ask for. But then after that, it all goes to the dish payment until that reaches $330,000. And then if there's additional sales tax revenue beyond that, it goes back to the 60-40 split. So it's pretty similar to what's on the sheet here, except we're saying if indeed our projections for the sales tax revenue are way too high, then we're not going to take that out of these two entities, in the county, I guess, would have to figure out some other way to cover the dish payment. And I guess it's a little bit complicated, but it has the advantage of giving everybody what they ask for in some sense.
Yeah, I mean, this is the financial statement of the budget from EMS right here. So they're projecting $865,000 in revenue, which I calculated to be about $351,000 lower than my projection. I think that my projection is still very conservative, but that's quite a chunk of money. $351,000 is a lot lower than what they would be reduced with the dish carve out, which is only $132,000. So
I think in what I'm proposing, if our sales tax projections are accurate, it would work out exactly the same as in your spreadsheet. But just
do you have a copy of the healthcare's 22 budget? It's my understanding that they had budgeted to cover the dish payment.
Yeah, I think they did. So
I don't think they did. It wasn't included this year. No, it was $1.8 million. So if we grant them only what we're projecting here, it's not quite in their budget. And as those folks were pointing out, as opposed to like the solid waste special service district or something, it's not an enterprise fund. So they don't really have any other options for funding except for increasing the cost to the few residents that live there.
I'm not sure what the latest updates that everyone might have received, but The latest budget update from the Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District with some updated projections for the tax does actually include DISH. So Canyonlands Healthcare is planning on, as Evan suggested, is planning on covering DISH through this allocation.
Yeah, and that wasn't included in their original presentation. They revised their projections, I assume, similar to how I did, since they presented. And so what they have in their presentation, I think, is also significantly lower projected than reality. I'm gonna try to pull it up and see if I can find if they have a easy to interpret budget. I'm not seeing a budget, I see profit and loss, but
why the EMS numbers, the projection is so much lower than your projections, Chris?
well, I don't think that they've been tracking it as closely as I have, and so it's gone up a surprising amount, and so I've been tracking it month by month as it comes in and revising my projections every single month.
And so, then for the remainder of the year, your projections are based on how much we're up so far through the end of August or so?
Well, it's actually that, but it's more complicated than that because I'm projecting month by month now. So I'm relating it month by month to prior years, 2019 specifically, and in some cases 2020. And so I can try to, bring up my detailed projection analysis if you want, just to show how it works. But it's a fairly, it's a much more sophisticated projection analysis than I've ever done in the past because we're in strange circumstances. In the first half of 2020, we were shut down, so it's kind of irrelevant. And so it forced me to project month by month. And so the projections are based on very conservative figures for the remainder of this year, much more conservative than what we've received year to date. And so I'm projecting, let me see if I can find it real quick, bring it up. But I'm projecting a major drop in growth for the second half of this year relative to the first half. And I don't think that's really going to happen. I'm just trying to find my.
So you think your projections are like you said, relatively conservative as well right now?
Oh, yeah. Fair. Yeah. So let me see if I can find what I'm talking about here. Oh no, this spreadsheet's pretty dense. I don't know if we'll be able to see it or make sense of it on the fly, but.
Can somebody send over the newest Camulyn Healthcare to me?
I didn't get it, so I haven't seen it.
I can send you over a letter. I'll forward something in an email right now.
Okay.
And Gabe, just to reiterate what you said, you're saying that DISH payment, the $330, is already in the budget of the healthcare special service district. Is that what you're saying?
After revising some projections, after the presentation that was given to us, after revising some projections, kind of taking into account more this line of thinking, it's written into the budget for the DISH. That's correct.
But that must be above and beyond the 1.8 million that they were requesting, because that was for their debt service and also the care facility subsidy.
So anyway, I mean, scrolling down, see if I can get to some of these. Maybe I need to change my zoom level here. There's a visual interpretation. See if I can get over. Visual interpretation of the projection. So Can you all see these graphs?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the last actual that we've received for the hospital right here in June. And you can see, and then, so this gray line is 2021 projection. This is the last actual we got. And then the rest of the year is my projections. And so you see my projections like dive off a cliff, and they're significantly lower than what our year-to-date has been. And you know, as more data comes in, I'll be able to revise these and get closer and closer. But you can see that my projection for the second half of the year is way lower than what we're trending for the first half of the year. So I think we're, you know, being very conservative with our projections for
And
this.
the hospital refers to the healthcare sales tax.
Yeah, so EMS, Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District, and the hospital are all eligible, in my opinion, for it.
What about, just on that train of thought, what about the original resolution with the ballot? Does that call out the option to include other entities, or was it strictly between the EMS and the healthcare?
Well, Christina sent you her opinion on that. And of course, you know, it just says Grant County Emergency Medical Services. And at the time, you know, ambulance service was under the county, not a special service district. However, you know, the hospital obviously provides emergency medical services. It's not like they're not a part of that system. So I don't think that we could say that the hospital is not involved in emergency medical services. That's where the ER is. And, you know, so anyway.
But the resolution also just, it said anything that the state allows the tax to be used for, including, and then it mentioned those two things.
Yeah, so, I mean, it called those out specifically, but I don't think it was trying to be exclusive to those things. That's the point of, I think, Christina's opinion, is that it calls them out, uses the word including, but it also references the statute, which, you know, allows us to use this money for really any sort of healthcare facility need that's spelled out in statute. And so
I'll piggyback off of that for the commissioners who didn't see my email, since we got EMS's letter late this morning. As I did review the resolution, it's 3074, and the voter information pamphlet also that was provided by the county at the time. And those documents show a clear intention to help support the Camulyn's Care Center and EMS, and this tax being a good way to do that. But it wasn't exclusive of those entities either. And it also, you know, both in the recitals of the resolution, but most importantly in the ballot title itself, the primary binding language refers to the Healthcare Facility Sales and Use Tax Act, which does include MRH as an eligible entity. And then it does have this permissive sort of including these two entities. There was clearly an intention to support those two entities, but not exclusive of MRH. So legally, there's no issue with paying the money to MRH or to the state for MRH if you guys decide to do that.
Joette, in that last letter that Gabe just sent, says that actually the money can't go directly to Moab Regional Hospital, that it has to go through the Healthcare Special Service District or some other governmental entity. So I don't know if that changes how we're talking about it here.
I think that it would actually go straight from us to the state.
From us to the hospital?
No, from the county straight to the state.
Oh, right.
And so the money, you know, we would just pay the state, and that would be the match for their disproportionate share.
So Sarah, that piece really isn't accurate.
Okay, I hear that.
So I put MRH because they're the benefactor of it, but really we would be sending the money, I believe, to the state of Utah.
Yeah, and I think that it's important for the county to support the hospital. I think that they offer great services. I think that they are kind of subsidizing Four Corners to a degree with their addiction stuff, and which is another entity that we contract with. And I think it's important for, like you're saying, EMS to have a hospital to take people to, for the care center to have a hospital to take people to. I appreciate the efforts to kind of figure out creative ways to fund this DISH payment. But I think it kind of came a little late. I know that these other, the healthcare special service district, the EMS special service district, we have their budgets in front of us. We see a lot of their projections and things, and we didn't really get any of that from the hospital. As you can see, a lot of us are kind of like in the dark of exactly how the DISH payment funding works, who can pay it, who cannot pay it, what's been happening over the past few years to get it paid, what's the plan for next year to get it paid. And I really think that the ballot question that brought about this healthcare sales tax was very specific towards EMS. The attorney was talking about the intent of the thing, but if you remember, all the ads in the newspaper had pictures of ambulances. They had pictures of people in the healthcare or in the care center. And, for this year or this budget that we're talking about, to me, it makes sense to, if the healthcare special service district is committing to contributing to that DISH payment, that we just keep the split at a straight 60-40, like it was proposed on the ballot, and then kind of work towards something with all the players for next year or in the future. I'm not saying that I don't think that we shouldn't contribute to the DISH payment at all, but I don't think the sales tax is the mechanism for that this year.
Well, the sales tax would be, and it would be just indirect if we gave it to the Camulyn Health Care Special Service District and they paid the DISH, the same tax as paying for the DISH. It's just instead of us paying for it, they would be paying for it. Correct?
Yeah.
It also would boost the EMS budget slightly. Because instead of it just being taken out of both of their 40-60 split, it'd be taken out only at the Camulyn's Health Care Center.
Correct. And I think, the EMS has done a good job of documenting how their costs, their expenses are pretty relatable to sales tax through visitation and call volume and stuff. So when town is quiet, their expenses decrease to a degree, whereas when town is busy, they're busier and their expenses go up and actually probably grow faster through overtime and things like that. So I think that even if they may have budgeted, I think, and that spreadsheet you were showing earlier, Chris, I think that was the 800 was a beginning of the year forecast, and I think it has been tweaked to be closer to $1 million or at $1 million. And
yeah,
so
that's what Andy just sent me a text, but still I'm projecting 170,000 more than that. And their DISH contribution would only be 132. So, I mean, I'm just, pointing out that even at $1 million projection, and again, when this graph that I just showed, I think we're being very conservative about what we're projecting here.
No, and I agree. And
numbers
I think
are likely to be a lot higher. And so even at $1 million, they're going to get a lot more than that.
Right. And I don't think any of these entities are in a place where they're like, oh, we've got more money than we know what to do with. Like there's a lot of trimming that's been happening at all. Well, I didn't see the hospital numbers, but I know that through the presentations that the healthcare district gave and that EMS gave, that the money generated through the sales tax could be easily put to good use. And so, I think if the care center is willing to cover that dish payment and they're actually going to come through with that, I like the 60-40 split. If there is, like I think somebody else was kind of mentioning the idea of maybe some of these other TRT or mineral lease monies from elsewhere could go towards contributing to a dish payment. I'm not opposed to the idea of the county contributing to that, but it does feel like we're kind of taking the food out of one mouth to feed another.
Well, but my understanding, Chris, my understanding is that for whatever reason, the hospital cannot directly pay the dish payment.
No, they can't. So because it's, they're looking for the people who administer that program are looking for, community support. So there was a time when the hospital made their own match, and then that was disallowed. And so, the first year the county just picked that dish payment up just straight out of our general fund because it kind of happened fast and we didn't want them to lose it. And then, in recent history, some nonprofits have helped raise money to make, some or all of that match when the healthcare district couldn't do it. And so, part of the rationale, as I stated before, is that the projections for how much money we're bringing in are so much greater than what anybody was expecting, and still greater, in my opinion, than the projections that the districts have provided me, that that the money's there above and beyond anybody's projections or budget, and so that's why I'm presenting it. And I guess I disagree with the concept that it's pulling money out of their mouth or whatever, because it's the healthcare sales tax is astronomically high right now, much higher than anybody could have ever projected, without seeing the actuals come in.
Well, so I support, there's a lot of proposals that have been mentioned, but I support something similar to what Chris has on the screen right now. I think one reason, which he just touched upon, is as the health sales tax fluctuates back and forth, I think the care center's needs are not fluctuating nearly that way. Maybe with EMS, I think they did emphasize that most of the people they serve are local, but some of it's tourism. So one could imagine that if we get more tourists and therefore more health tax sales revenue, we're also going to have more EMS situation.
They are impacted in a lot of the same ways that everybody else is, with regard to just not enough employees to go around, wage battles. So they've got retention and recruitment problems just the same as everybody else, which is relatable to tourism. Although I get your point. I think Sarah, to a degree, has a point also, which is that if we're trying to figure out a way to get EMS at a combined equivalent of 50% of the healthcare sales tax, one option would be to put the full dish payment on the healthcare district, which would level that out a little bit more. And so, maybe that's the best option if they're willing.
They want
to make sure that the dish payment's getting made, especially when we've got such a high stream of, amount of revenue.
My concern with that,
I guess the point I was.
Just my concern with that, with these numbers, is that in the budget for the Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District, they asked for 1.8 million to cover their debt service and the care center. So in order to add the dish on top of it, we're looking at a bigger budget, 2.1 million, which we're not.
That just can't be realistic. Because we're talking about a substantial increase in revenue here. If this didn't
they haven't paid the dish payment for the last few years.
Yeah, and so I haven't really seen I guess I can look at the revised letter.
It doesn't have numbers. I was just going off of their presentation.
Okay.
I think it's important that we just know that our goal is to make sure the dish payment is paid. For Canyonland Healthcare District, appears to really want to take on that responsibility. And they will do it if we just do the 60-40. That seems like the most streamlined way to do it. It just needs to be paid. So
I thought part of the reason we're in this situation is in the past, they had chosen not to. I mean, it seems more straightforward to me just to pay it directly than we're not relying on some other entity to.
Yeah, that's true too. I just think since they want to, for whatever reason, the health district is really pushing it. They think they should pay it. Well, if they let them pay it.
And they do have an existing contract with the Department of Health. So the administration of that dish payment is sort of, that's already in place. So that's less of a burden on the administrator's office to get that going. And I just wanted to echo too what Evan was saying about the timing, because even this current 60-40 split, in recent past, it's been a pretty sensitive topic, and it's required a lot of dialogue between EMS and Camulyn Healthcare to come up with that in a way that is agreeable in a sort of coalition-based way. And now, really, I see this sort of pulling out this 330 and as a way of sort of taking out of EMS's budget as well. I see it as almost putting Camulyn's Healthcare and EMS potentially a little bit at odds again over that split, and that concerns me a little bit when Camulyn's Healthcare is ready to step up with the revised budget to just cover it and not create sort of another situation where EMS might be coming back to sort of reconsider that split now that they're paying for the dish as well.
I guess the reason I find the arguments from both EMS and the Special Service District unpersuasive is until very recently they were assuming that total tax revenues were going to be quite a bit lower than we think they are now, and they were saying 60% is fine and 40% is fine, and now suddenly there's a lot more, and they're still saying 60 and 40 is just barely enough, and anything below that would. So I mean, the issue here is sales tax fluctuates, but their needs don't fluctuate in the same way. And so it seems to be in a year where we're expecting the sales tax to be a lot higher than it normally is, I don't really see why there's an objection to using some of that, roughly 10% to pay the dish payment. Because even with that taken out, the total amount of revenue was more than they were expecting. I think that's the point that Chris originally made. So Chris, please correct me if I misstated that.
No, that's right. And like I said, I think for 2021, my projections are still conservative. Wouldn't surprise me if we see 200,000 or 300,000 more than I'm projecting for 2021, which would bleed over into 2022 also. But I'm playing it safe and being relatively conservative here. If I can do whatever pretty easy, whatever you guys decide. I think that it can be a little tough in the long run when we do more complicated allocations, where we send the money to one district and then they send it to the state, where we could just do it straight away ourselves. But whatever you guys decide, we can easily set it here. Changing this formula would be easy. All I'd have to do is change the formula real quick and it would bump up. Let me see if I can do the redo here, because I just did it. So here's if this is what they would be projected to get if we didn't carve out the dish payment. So this is with the dish payment carved out, and this is without.
How would it EMS?
It adds up to 330,000, but 60% of that would go back into Canyonlands Healthcare, and 40% of that 330 would go back into EMS.
Well, I see the validity of both, us paying it or Canyonlands Healthcare paying it. I just lean towards, since it's a healthcare tax and Canyonlands Healthcare has taken care of it in the past, and if they're willing to take care of it now, and should we do a straw poll? That's what I would say. Put it back.
I guess one thing I'm wondering about is just how solid, if they give us an ironclad commitment that they are going to pay it. And I think that changes, then sure, why not route it through them? But I guess the advantage of sending it directly is then we don't have to worry about some other board, doing what we think ought to happen with this money. But if they're willing to give us a very strong commitment that they're going to pay the dish payment, regardless of how the sales taxes actually come in, then.
Yeah. So just
Chris,
a point to make, is that we can't dictate how they spend the money when we send it to them outside of the terms of an agreement. So if we had an agreement with them, then that's fine, and it's a mutually entered into agreement. But without an agreement, once they get the money, it's theirs to spend however they want.
Chris, could you just briefly speak to if we wanted to commit the full healthcare sales tax to the two entities that were presented on the ballot, and fund the dish payment from other sources? Is there kind of any obvious spot of where else that dish payment could come from?
No, there's not.
I mean, would TRT be eligible to cover that?
Huh?
Would TRT tax be eligible to cover that?
It would, but it would.
Sure.
It would. It
would be the mitigation budget, so we'd have to make up for it out of the general. So it's basically coming out of general fund, I think.
Yeah. So TRT can go towards emergency medical services. So what we'd have to do, would be give EMS transient room tax, then deduct a certain amount from the healthcare sales tax and a respective amount projected, and do a big switcheroo. But the problem with that is that, the transient room tax that we'd have to spend is exactly the same that we're using to offset law enforcement expenses and search and rescue, et cetera. And so it cuts into our bottom line and puts us in a position where we're that much closer to have to do a property tax increase. And so I'm pretty guarded about that side of the transient room tax because I don't think this community is in a position where they can handle a property tax increase. And so I really, try very hard to be protective of that side of the transient room tax, because it's what's, it's really the reason we've only had to do one general operations property tax increase in like 13 or 14 years. And so that's my kind of philosophy there.
I guess I was just kind of looking at this spreadsheet that we're working off of today. So not so much the specifically the large increase in the solid waste special service district budget. It's gone up a lot in 2 years, and I wonder if some of that might go towards a hospital instead.
Well, good. Yeah.
But if we maintain the 60-40 split and give the Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District a little boost from what was in the solid waste budget, because I agree with Evan, it seems like it's looking at that budget that was presented by Evan Terrell. I really support all of the work that they're doing, but they have a bunch of sort of rainy day funds. I don't know. Seems like it could go towards some of these areas where there aren't those buffer funds.
Well, it kind of goes back though to what, my argument against that is it goes back to what Kevin was speaking of. This healthcare sales tax has exploded. There's a ton more money sitting there than anybody ever anticipated. And so, I'll just be quite frank, it's always the case, no matter how much money is available, that people are going to say it's not enough. Every single year, you'll hear that every year, year after year. And so you have to take that with a grain of salt, quite honestly, and look at the actual figures, look at the actual numbers, look at the facts, and be rational.
That's what I was doing.
Okay, so I'm just saying that I don't think, that it's rational to steal from the solid waste district when there's so much money available via the healthcare sales tax.
Yeah, my understanding was that they also used to receive mineral lease money, which they don't get any of anymore. So yes, the healthcare tax is booming, but we've also cut them in that regard.
Well, they do actually. They get
for the Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District.
Oh, well, and so that's, the history behind that is that we used to get really millions of dollars in mineral lease money. And that's dropped, very substantially. And so that pool of money just has all but dried up compared with what it used to be. And so some of these other districts like recreation district, they're totally reliant on that money. And so as the healthcare sales tax came online, and at the same time, mineral lease totally dropped off a cliff, it was necessary to make those reallocations just to keep, the basic debt, annual debt obligations paid in the rec district, et cetera. So, it was a forced change. We had to do it. Otherwise, there would be financial insolvency. And, when I look at this prior year, like for instance, this is an evaluation of how 2020 panned out versus what we projected for 2020. So the healthcare special service district got $294,000 more than we projected, and this is in 2020. EMS got about $185,000 more than in 2020. And then the rec district actually got less than we projected. Transportation district got less. So those entities kind of end up on the short end of the stick because they're funded by mineral lease, which is dropping, and the other ones are funded by tax, which is going up.
Could I throw something out for a straw poll? What about a 40% of the healthcare sales tax going to EMS and 60% minus 330 for the dish payment going to the healthcare special service district?
Before that straw poll, I'm hoping to weigh in on some things too. Members of both of the entities, CCC and EMS, reached out to me and said, hey, as long as Chris's projections hold true, we're good. So I don't know that there's as much drama in this decision as we think there is. If the projections hold true, and I'm compelled that they are conservative projections, and we all know Chris is very good at doing that. So I think that's important to keep in mind. I really appreciate Gabe's point, which is this percentage is a negotiation between these two entities, and that's been delicate. At the same time, the commission makes that decision, not these two entities. So, I do think that's an important point to consider, but ultimately, I don't think it should be controlling the decision. And the other thing I want to bring up is just the history with the commission not supporting MRH recently, and the CIB funded a new clinic in the Valley, and the commission, which was not this commission, but the commission at the time voted not to push CIB. We did send a letter saying, hey, are you sure you did the correct feasibility study? Because the CIB had not done so. They had not followed the law, but this commission didn't support MRH in that effort. And now we have a new clinic that is going to sufficiently impact the profitability of MRH, which does provide extremely important services. And then I also want to emphasize the point that MRH is doing a lot more than just emergency services, which they do provide, more than their general clinic, more than their urgent care, but they are doing a massive amount of work that's super important on mental health and addiction services. And that's something that my office works with MRH and the related partners that MRH is supporting every day, if not every week for sure. So, the work is really important to me. It seems really clear that the county would just be there for this dish payment. And even though the CCC has committed to some extent, and I haven't seen any of this correspondence, so I don't know what that commitment looks like, to cover the dish payment, it has been quite a scramble every single year for them to do so. And so I can appreciate that the CCC doesn't want to see their contribution reduced in any way, but I actually think there's a lot of benefit to CCC to taking off the stress of covering the dish payment, where it's coming from, when they're going to come up with it, et cetera. And again, as long as these numbers hold true, I think all the entities will end up being happy. And that's my input.
I'm curious who you heard from the EMS that said that they were okay with this.
It was someone on the board who didn't authorize that I talk about it personally at the meeting, but you and I can talk about that later.
Oh, I think that the letter that the board just sent kind of spelled out their stance on it. So
I think
what
their
you're saying
stance is always going to be, like Chris says, is like, we need more money. And all these entities, I'm not doubting that they all, obviously, everyone needs more money.
Right. I guess I'm going to base decisions off the letter that was sent from the board and approved, rather than some hearsay that I heard from an unnamed person that they were okay with this.
So what was your straw poll, Evan? What was your
I also agree that the hospital is a very crucial part of this community, and I would like to see this body support it. I'm also the liaison for the EMS, and I know that they have been struggling, and there's a lot of exciting things to come, and they could serve the community quite well. So my just kind of general, what do people think about the idea, was keeping the healthcare sales split at 40% for EMS and Canyonlands Healthcare at 60% minus the dish payment of $330,000. So to the attorney's point, it would take that stress off of Canyonlands Healthcare to come up with that. And it would also, to Chris's point, kind of clean up the revenue stream, whereas we wouldn't just be, it's not our money to give away, but it's that sales tax wouldn't necessarily be going through the special service district. And I think that's the formula that I was just saying there.
So you were saying you want to stick with what Chris suggested?
No,
not originally. So
compared
originally
to what Chris suggested, this is more money for EMS and less money for the health, for the special service district, and the same amount of money for the dish, right?
Yeah. So instead of both entities contributing to the dish payment, which is basically how I see it in my mind, it would be just the EMS would still get the 40% that they were budgeting for. The Canyonlands Healthcare Center would still get the 60% that they were budgeting for, but that letter that Gabe just shared that said that they were willing to cover the dish payment, it would just kind of take that calculation out of it. So remove the dish payment from their budget, but have it. Does that make sense? I think some folks are tracking.
So another way of saying it is that this is consistent with the proposal we got from the special service district, except that instead of sending the $300,000 to them and then them paying the dish, we'll just pay it directly, and everything else is exactly the same as that proposal, right?
Yeah.
I would say that I'm okay with this. I would like sort of a little tweak to it would be to, I think there was a suggestion of a contractual agreement for this year that the healthcare service district would come up with DISH. And that way we wouldn't have to rip up the existing contract with the Department of Health. And therefore, I think would be less of a burden administratively. Just a thought.
So you're suggesting, Gabe, is that we put the 330,000 into the Canyonlands Healthcare District and have them pay for it. Correct? Is that what you're saying?
Right. Sure. While at least, you know, establishing some sort of ironclad agreement that the DISH would be covered, because I see that being the real sort of sticking point here.
I think what Evan was stating though is that we'll just pay it, but it's coming out of their budget, so then we know that it's being paid. Is that correct, Evan?
Yeah, and maybe Chris or Chrissy could speak to that point of the existing contract with Canyonlands Healthcare District, how hard that would be to just take that over as the county.
Yeah, I guess I don't maybe Gabe can explain more. I don't really understand what that contract is or why.
Well, I think he's referring to what I refer to. So, you know, when we send money to a district outside of an agreement, they're not obligated to spend it in any particular way other than compliant with state statute. And so if we want to ensure that they're going to spend it the way that we're discussing, we would have to have an agreement with the special service district in order to ensure it. And
I thought I heard Gabe say that it would be more difficult administratively if we paid it directly, and it sounds like what you're saying is the other way around.
We need a DHS account and a contract, so there's a hoop to jump through for the county, but it's not a huge burden.
That's what I'm talking about. Those extra few hoops is all I'm referring to.
Yeah.
Well, I think, yeah. So what Gabe, I think, is saying is it's easier for us to enter into an agreement with the service district than it is to change the contract with the state. And maybe that's true, maybe it's not, I have no idea. But either way, you know, if we were to make the contribution, then the agreement that the service district has with the state would have to be transferred over to us.
So I guess that's a question for the attorney. In terms of the hoops of it, does it seem like more or less headache for the county to make the payment directly, or to create an ironclad contract with the special service district that they will cover it?
The DHS process is very standardized. You know, we certainly have other contracts with them similarly. So, you know, if we create an agreement with SSD, if we want to take that to that formal step, then we're creating that on our own. So I think if I had to compare them, I think the DHS process would be easier and more standardized.
I kind of like that angle just because I think that we have heard of some struggles to kind of annually make that payment, just with all the other things that the Healthcare Special Service District is trying to cover. And I think it also would show that the county is supportive of the hospital, and that we would, you know, by holding that contract, I would hope that in future years, we would continue to make that payment, and we can kind of revisit these splits and relationships with all the players to make sure we're doing that.
I think I like the sentiment here. I just worry because doing something like this is sort of like forcing the budget of the Canyonlands Health Care Special Service District, where they've had to make tough decisions in the past based on their budgeting to drop the DISH payment because they had no other streams of revenue, like none. They're not an enterprise fund. So they continued to keep the care center open with their budget and didn't pay the DISH payment. And now we're kind of like, we'd be like forcing the budget, like, oh, out of your chunk of money, you have to pay the DISH payment, while not giving them quite what they requested. I mean, maybe we would, because the healthcare tax is probably going to be higher, but I would like to see us at least cover their basic budget, which would be 1.8 million.
But that 1.8 million includes, that's assuming that they're paying the dish payment?
No, that's not. As far as I understand, I mean, that was just the debt service, which is 400,000 to the CIB, and the care center subsidy, which is 1.4 million. But I understand that the healthcare tax
that
is
1.4
probably,
is that something fixed, or that's just what that was their goal?
that was in the presentation.
So what I'm seeing we're discussing, we have 3 options are being discussed right now. Keep it as our budget officer suggests. Evan's suggestion is that we do it the 60-40 prior to the taking out of the dish payment so that it bumps up EMS a little bit. And the other suggestion is to give to Canyonlands Healthcare Service. Are those the three ways we're looking at it?
So I think what Evan suggested is up on the screen right now, which is that we take the 330 off the 60%. And so that's what this figure is, 1.622 million for Canyonlands Healthcare. EMS gets 50% of state help plus a full 40% of the healthcare sales tax, and then Grant County enters into an agreement with the state to make the dish payment. And so that's what Evan's suggesting. The other suggestion, besides the one that I presented, was to include this 330,000 in the Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District, and then just enter into an agreement with them, that they'll use some of that money for the dish payment.
So I want to say something in favor of Evan's suggestion and maybe one small modification. I think part of the difficulty of this conversation is we don't know with certainty what the sales tax revenues are going to be. And I think the districts, fear the worst, and we're maybe making more realistic, but not 100% guaranteed assumptions. So my understanding of the recent letter from Joette is that if sales tax revenues are in the range of what the county's projecting, then they would be fine with the dish payment coming out of their 60%. And that's what Evan's proposal does, except it would pay it directly, which I think is better.
She says 30 to 50% up. Is that what the county is projecting?
I guess it depends on what your base is.
What was that, Chris?
Relative to what?
I mean, they are up 50% at the beginning of the year, but the projections don't assume that that's continuing. So yeah, maybe it was not as clear what Joette meant there.
Yeah.
So let me say it differently then, since I think Sarah's correct. It's hard to understand that letter. The sales tax is going up, and I think this, even under Evan's proposal, the healthcare special service district is getting more money than they would have anticipated a couple of years ago, because sales taxes are going up faster than anyone anticipated. So I guess I just have trouble believing that that's some kind of draconian budget cut on them when the revenue is going up. But I get, and this is the modification, maybe the county wants to make some kind of a commitment that if the sales taxes aren't as high as these projections, then we would look at, making up the gap. Because I think if sales taxes were low, we wouldn't be proposing taking a dish out of the sales tax. We'd be trying to find it somewhere else, maybe out of general fund money, if that was the only thing. Because I don't think we would want to cut the budgets of these two entities when the budgets are already going down, because the total healthcare sales tax is going down. So yeah. I guess I'm supporting what Evan suggested, but with a commitment to re-examine it if sales taxes are lower than we think they're going to be.
Yeah, I mean, the other issue that I brought up in the past, and I feel like I should keep pushing it, maybe, is that Grant County has, assumed responsibility fully for EMS and and basically, the dish payment, et cetera, making sure that happens. But, the city of Moab's never put anything into it, and I've recommended to both EMS and Canyon Healthcare that they start going to the city to see if they can get, some proportional share from the city, because most of our residents, at least half of our residents live within city limits, and they say, oh yeah, we're going to do that. But, I don't know that it ever happens. Every single year they say we're going to do it, and then they don't. So, there's other opportunities potentially, for more commitment from other government entities as well. And we've, continued to carry this, a lot of these costs 100%, but, I don't know that that's exactly fair, quite honestly. Of course, the city seems like they're not in the greatest position for it right now, but, at some point, I think, splitting some of these costs out among the respective government entities who can contribute and are expected to contribute by the state, is a meaningful thing to bring up.
I'm just going to make a pitch for increasing the Camulyn's healthcare budget to what it was in the past few years. Like, it seems like after COVID and everything, the people who are working there constantly, like trying to cover shortages, and we're going to decrease their budget by $200,000. It seems like I just don't want to forget that this would actually be decreasing their budget from what they requested and what they've received in the past.
Is it a decrease from what they received in the past? Like that 2019 actual, I think didn't they pay the dish payment that year?
No.
In
I don't think
2019?
In 2019? They got mineral lease money that year. I thought they were paying the dish payment as long as they had mineral lease money.
They probably did in 2019.
Okay, so their budget
2019 was, 1.7 million total.
But they were paying the dish payment.
I think so. 2020, dropped, but then came back up 2021. I'm projecting they'll end up about 1.8. And then so, from what I hear, given the projections, if, they hold true, then they should be able to make the dish payment this year and next year if we send them the money. I mean, this 1.62 million is with the 330,000 deducted from the 60%.
Right.
And if they make the payment,
so I guess the point I'm making is, excluding dish payments, it looks like the amount of money going from the healthcare sales tax to the special service district is going up significantly. Not 20%, but maybe an annual increase of 7 or 8% compared to 2019.
So yeah, I mean,
1.4 million versus 1. So it looks like it's 1.4 million in 2019, excluding the dish, if I'm understanding correctly.
If the dish was paid in 2019.
But the story I heard is they only stopped paying it when we stopped sending them mineral lease money, and we sent them an amount of mineral lease money that's very similar to what the dish payment is then. So I think it's reasonable to assume.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, if you subtract 330,000 from their total in 2019, that would be 1.37 million. And what we're projecting, if we deduct 330,000 from 60%, is 1.622 million. So it would be an increase over 2019's total if you subtract out that dish payment.
But it decreased from the last 2 years.
No, because, well, from this year only, 2020.
Oh, right.
2020 was low because of COVID, but
I mean, these are hard things because we don't have the real specific understanding of budgets. But I just want to point out that we are decreasing it from where they have been at and what they requested.
Another point
that might be true, but I don't think it's true of any prior year. And then, I'm assuming they'll make the dish payment this year too, hopefully. So it's, if you factor in that they'll make a dish payment in 2021, given that these high levels of tax keep coming as I projected, then I think, well, let's just see what that is. So if you deduct 330 from this year, that's 1.495 million. And then next year it would go up 1.622 million.
That doesn't seem unreasonable to me.
I'm looking back at their presentation and it explains a little bit why they had a lower budget. They didn't have to pay the debt service to the CIB, which is $400,000 a year. It was deferred for 2 years in 2020 and 2019.
Their debt payment should be more like 330, I think.
Oh, it says it's
No, their debt on the care center. That's separate from the
payment, not dish payment.
Yeah.
But
it does seem like their budget this year was only 1.4 million, so they will be able to pay the dish payment this year.
And again, I think that these projections are conservative, could easily end up quite a bit more than that if trends continue. I don't really see any reason why they're not, but within a couple of days, I'll get July's figures in, and that'll help clarify some, or at least reinforce the projections. But
just to clarify, 2021 they also didn't have to pay the $400,000 debt service. So I don't know. Looking at it, it looks like their request for 1.8 million is legitimate based on. It's in the packet on page 14.
I still think that based on the last 5 minutes of conversation, the amount of money they're getting from the health tax that they do not have to spend on the dish payment is going up at a steady rate since 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't feel like the Evan's proposal is imposing harsh conditions on the special service district.
And I very much agree with Chris's projections. I look at the numbers in my shop all the time, and sales taxes, we're definitely collecting more sales tax than we were last year at this time and through the summer. So I don't doubt that his projections are valid.
Is there anybody opposed to my proposal?
Are you opposed, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I've said my piece. I want to see the budget at Camulyn's Healthcare Center. I want us to see us fulfilling their budget request. Whether we add some money from the solid waste special service district or whatever. But if I'm alone in that, then you guys should vote.
Gabriel,
I'd rather see it at 60-40 and trust Camulyn Healthcare Special Service District's commitment to pay DISH this year. And then if the DISH is going to be a part of this conversation, it should happen with a lot more advanced sort of discussion next season.
I guess my vote is for more or less what's on the screen right now that Evan proposed. Also, I didn't quite understand the remark about the dish coming in late. I thought of from the earliest budget documents we got, the same time we got the presentations, I thought this proposal was there.
I think the lateness, Kevin, came that the discussions that Gabe was referencing between the healthcare special service district and EMS every year, they kind of like go to the mat to wrestle over the split. And this year they did the work so that they could come to us without us having to.
They had their discussions before without this being aware of this proposal.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So one thing also to point out is that, except for solid waste, none of these districts are getting what they asked for, really. And that's the case almost every year, that we can't fulfill everybody's request at 100%.
So it looks like we're down to two proposals. Gabe's just putting the money back and then splitting it like the two districts had negotiated, or Evan's proposal. Are we to those two? Taking out the one that,
so maybe let's just find out about Evan's proposal, since it's up on the screen, and if that doesn't have a majority, then we'll go back to the other proposal where healthcare special service district is making the dish payment.
Okay, thank you. That's certainly right. That's certainly okay. Okay, so we're talking about who supports the proposal that is on the screen right now. We'll do a straw poll. Jacques?
I'll support it. Yeah.
Trish?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Sarah? Gabriel?
No.
Kevin?
Yes.
Evan?
Yes.
Mary? No. Passes, of the straw poll says it passes 3 to 4. So Evan's proposal.
Okay.
Not a strong vote either way. Yes, Chris?
So before we wrap up, are there any other adjustments that anybody wants to make? Because I'm going to draft the resolutions and everything according to this. Of course, you can change your mind between now and when the official vote happens, but this is just giving me an advanced time to fill out the resolutions.
That's why we had the.
I was just going to say, could you scroll down to this half of it? Okay.
So I think Sarah brought up, are we talking about other budgets now?
Yes.
So Sarah brought up that she thought the solid waste district request had some fluff in it.
Well, it's not fluff. It's $300,000 that goes into set aside funds, which is a good business model or whatever. But if that's the only budget that we're making the full request for, I just wonder if we could just shift some of those mineral lease monies up to the Camulyn Health Center.
Hey, Mary, you're on their board. Do you know, are those set asides for just major, as far as, equipment malfunctions, just being prepared for that? I know listening to Evan talk to Thompson, he talked about, they're lacking the trucks that can do, have the big forks on front and come up over the top and that, so I don't know, maybe you can speak to what they might be.
I think that anytime there's a big change and the transition from just being solid waste to being distribution, it's going to mean hiring. When it was taken over, it ended up there were 3 less people in the administrative section. So there's going to have to be some hiring. Right now, there's not enough people to manage the administration part. And yes, there's just always, he came into a district that hadn't had any improvements for quite a while. So there still are a lot of improvements that need to be made. I see this changing. I see that as time goes by, there will be less of a need once everything settles in. There should be less of a need once those, things have happened so that they can run. So I would support it this year. I think we need to make it very clear that this cannot be depended upon. That we're not going to increase our budget every year, and we may start to freeze it. That would be my recommendation.
Chris, I have do you have an idea of what that 400,000 and change, what percent of TRT that is?
Total? Hold on.
I guess just because so many of these other slots are filled out with percentages, I'm just kind of curious what that would look like and if it would make any sense to kind of apply a percentage there rather than a.
Well, I'm very strongly opposed to that, but I'll tell you anyway.
Okay.
So,
I'm guessing Tim. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Let's see. So let me just do a real quick calculation for you.
And so your take is going to be a percentage of the total mitigation budget. Is that the one year?
So yeah, just the mitigation budget, it's like 7.5%, 7.6%. And I discussed briefly with them the possibility of increasing the our TRT contribution relative to their increased costs every year associated with tourism, and he responded, just a rough guesstimate of like 6. I think. See if I can find the email real quick. I mean, part of this increase is because Evan was asking, I think, for like 62,000 to make one-time purchases for some. I don't know what they are, waste receptacles, big, really expensive waste receptacles. And so, yeah, the average increase that he showed me trending for volume, I think, is 7.2%. Biosolids specifically are more like around 10%. So obviously this increase is about 25% or more. But again, it's sort of, he's also making a request for 62,000 for metal dumpster containers. So you might, consider rolling that off. And to me, I look at it more from the perspective of relevance to their needs and growing volumes associated with tourism. Our permanent population goes up very slowly, about 0.5% per year, according to the census. So, obviously the majority of the increase is tourism related in their business. So we can't send the TRT to the healthcare district because but in this scenario for EMS, but we could send, like mineral lease over if we wanted, but not the TRT part.
But this idea of committing a flat dollar rate down to like 8 pennies, could you speak to that versus the idea of just committing 5 or 7% of the TRT mitigation funds to it?
Yeah, that's an option. I mean, that's what I was considering doing also. Just increasing our contribution relative to that, like, whatever increase they're seeing every year in volume. And that's another option. So that would be, let's see.
I guess I would be more comfortable with the opposite, in that I think budgeting in terms of percentages is pretty weird. And we don't do it with the main county budget. Just because, typically the financial needs are in actual dollars and the revenue sources fluctuate up and down. So it's better, when possible, just to commit a fixed amount of money, I think.
Yeah, for this especially, like I say, it wouldn't be relative to TRT growth. It'd be relative to their volumetric growth in trash or whatever. So, if we did a 7% increase, it would be 321,000 instead of 402,949.
Yeah, I guess I was more coming, and I'm just kind of exploring ways of thinking, like Kevin was saying. But, if for some reason TRT were to tank and then we're kind of on the hook for this 400,000, if it was a percentage or whatever, whereas if, our projections were off, then we weren't on the hook, or if town was really busy and therefore the landfills were really busy, then they would, collect more. But I was more questioning the philosophy behind it rather than the actual numbers.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, one thing to realize about this contribution is it's not contractual. And in 2020, we did actually reduce it because our TRT collections were way low. And by the end of the year, I bounced it back up to what it was originally budgeted for, because our TRT recovered in the second half of the year. So we made a budget amendment and took it down. And then we made another budget amendment and put it back up. So there's no contract associated with this. It's always at our discretion to change this allocation at any time. And so, that you can keep that in mind, that if things aren't panning out, we can just say, oh, we need to do a budget amendment, and we just convey that to that district, and they'd have to deal with it. Because, this is not by agreement.
Yeah.
Well, I'm fine with it as is if people more familiar with the district think this is reasonable. I just, since we were emphasizing in the previous conversation that most people don't get everything they ask for, I just thought it was worth questioning.
Yeah, that's a good point. And like I say, if we wanted to make adjustments, we could either drop our TRT contribution or shift some mineral lease around.
Why don't we just make the TRT an even 400,000, and then it just, I don't know. It looks like they're not just getting exactly what they asked for.
I'm going to try to agree with Evan as much as possible today. So yeah, I definitely second that suggestion. It's an easy one to agree with.
Okay, Mary, you want to call us straw poll from or maybe just ask if anybody else objects?
Does anyone object?
I mean, I would only go back to you, Chris, if $50,000 of TRT mitigation would make a real big difference somewhere else. I could easily be persuaded to pull another 50,000 out of that 400,000, but
so Chris,
I'm kind of looking at you for the
wrong,
big picture stuff.
I tend to think of TRT mitigation money as just equivalent to general fund money, because we've got enough flexibility. You can use it to pay for sheriff's department and other things we're going to be doing anyway. So it's not like the promotion side of TRT that has a lot more restrictions.
Yeah, so it does cut into our bottom line. Every dollar that we send of this side of the TRT is going to have to be made up for by unrestricted property taxes or unrestricted sales taxes. So it does cut into our bottom line. But, you know, obviously solid waste is an eligible expense, and solid waste is incurred, you know, cost associated with tourism also. So.
It's kind of hard to talk about this because we don't have the rest of the budget to look at, but I know that I'm going to be pushing for us to start doing some water monitoring in Grand County, which historically has not been funded and would have to come out of general fund, for instance. And also just to say, the transportation special solid waste, the solid waste special service district is an enterprise fund, so they're able to get their own revenue through fees and things like that. So I would support probably taking that down a little bit.
But the problem with the fees and being that is it ends up coming out of mostly the people who live here, our residents. It comes from our residents. And so if we increase our fees because we take away TRT, then it's our residents who are paying the extra, because the tourists that come into town, they're not going up to Moab landfill. They're not paying for a dumpster. They're not doing any of that type of stuff.
Mary, do you know what percentage of their fees are paid by hotels and other tourism businesses?
No, I don't. I'm sorry, I don't. I don't know the percentage. I just know that, you know, when you follow their graphs, the increase in the amount of municipal waste they deal with during the tourist season is pretty substantial, very substantial.
I missed that, Chris. What percentage is 400,000 of the TRT mitigation?
About 7.5%.
So when we're done with this, I wanted to look at the recreation district.
Okay, so is everybody good with this, or are there any other proposals for solid waste?
Sorry, Chris, did you just send an email?
I just forwarded you some information that Evan from the solid waste district sent me. I don't know if you have, it's a lot, but there's a table in there with, you know, like the increase over the years of total waste volume.
Gotcha.
Like 2016 really spiked everything up, and maybe 2018 also. It's kind of slowed down, it looks like, after 2019 and through 2021 is considerably less than that average.
Can you scroll to the right to some of those past years actuals?
So I've got two on this one. 2020 we totaled about 316. And then 2019 was 402, 225. In the past, before that, it was more like probably around 300,000-ish, maybe between 300 and 400,000.
I mean, there's a part of me that does kind of see this as a big jump up, and if I know that there are some budgets where, you know, 20,000 here or there is a really big number for them, and so that's kind of my only hesitation is such a big chunk of the TRT going to this, but. Like Sarah was saying, without seeing the whole TRT budget, it's a little hard to kind of know if that's.
Yeah, I mean,
so here's my attempt to agree with Evan yet again. So we'll be doing the budgeting for all, you know, the main part of county government in the near future. And that's where we'll be looking at other things funded by the general fund or TRT mitigation, which I think is equivalent to that. And if when doing that, we realize we wish we had more money, then I think we're free to go back and revise this number downward. If it looks like budgeting is tight elsewhere in the county budget, and I think that would be appropriate. So this is just we can think of this as a tentative number, assuming that, other aspects of county budgeting are getting what they need. And if it looks like belt tightening is required, this is one of the places we could do it.
So you're saying leave it as is today and then revisit it later?
Yeah, but remember that we could revise it later.
Okay.
And think about that when we're doing the rest of the county budget.
So the thing to realize about this appropriation is it's not official until you approve the budget at your second meeting in December. And so this is just basically, when we get to this part of the agenda, the motion will be to direct me to put it into the tentative budget. And then in December, you'll approve the budget, with any modifications. And so the actual true approval for the transient room tax allocations happens in the second meeting in December.
I think this just gives districts and such that are also working on their budget something to go from.
Yeah, and that's the point that we do this at this point. So it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing, but we do this now so that these districts can know how to budget, because they're on calendar years also, I think, all of them. And, obviously we're not going to know what our bottom line is for at least another month. And so we're kind of shooting in the dark a little bit on the transient room tax question because we don't know how our bottom line is going to shake out. But there's just really no alternative. If we waited until we knew what our bottom line is, then these districts would be in the dark on their budgeting process until, it's too late almost for them to put a budget together. So we kind of have to do it this way.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was saying. Otherwise, they don't have any means of doing their own budgets.
Sure. Okay, let's move on to the recreation.
So I just wanted to make sure so it looks like, Chris, you've done something similar to what I was talking about a meeting or two ago, where for their youth sports stuff and grants, which could be funded out of the TRT, the non-mitigation part of TRT, we're proposing to do that. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, that's right. It's a good distinction. The other side of the TRT, what we might call promotional economic diversification side. We have, I'm projecting between $600,000 and $700,000 a year for, what I'm considering to be the establishment and or promotion of recreation. And so this would impact that budget specifically, which also is going to probably include, responsible trail messaging, et cetera, and film commission, event funding, et cetera. So this will cut into that budget, but it won't cut into the general fund budget.
So that line is competing with things like responsible trail messaging, but it's not competing with the general fund.
That's right.
So yeah, I think that's a good change. Better to fund it from there than from the mineral lease stuff.
I don't want to open a can of worms, but since you mentioned the film commission, could you just give us an update on the county-city split?
So the city canceled the film commission's budget for 2022. And so I just asked that employee over at the city to draft a proposal for the county to fully fund it. And then we'll include it, in all the other requests. And it would be coming out of the same pot of money that this 137 would be coming out of. And so we'll have to evaluate whether or not we want to do that or not. That's going to be one of those big decisions that I think the commission's going to have to make in November. The Budget Advisory Board will consider it also, but that's going to end up being a commission specific decision that I'm going to flag when we have our meetings in November.
And has the city already approved that budget, or is there a chance that they might revisit that?
Well, they already approved it. I mean, I suppose they could revisit it too. They'd take another budget amendment.
Yeah, no, I had only heard it in regards to the property tax, so I wasn't sure where the film commission specifically stood on that. So thanks for that.
Yeah, so I don't know at this point, but there's going to be a proposal coming to us for fully funding it.
So the city just cut Biga's position completely?
Excuse me, Doc, I didn't understand you.
The city cut the film commission's position completely?
Yes. It's been discussed for years. It was what I'm sad that didn't happen is for a while we were talking about sharing an economic development person. And part of that would be that we could use TRT tax to our TRT promotional tax to do the film commission. But that kind of went by the wayside.
But Jacques, it was a 50-50 split for a long time.
Right.
So they bailed on their half. Yeah. Which also kind of came out of left field, at least for me. I didn't expect that as an option.
But in the city's defense, if they were funding that out of general revenue money, and it's something the county could do on the promotional side of the TRT,
Makes
budget,
sense.
it kind of makes sense. So
because if we can spend money like that, rather than really promoting more tourists, I would prefer that.
Well, tourism promotion is a whole separate category, but this would be coming out of the portion that's specific to establishing and promoting recreation, film, and convention.
Okay.
So I don't have anything else that I'm interested in. Does anyone else? Are we almost done now?
Yeah, so we can give Chris some time. Chris and Mallory, they're going to be busily getting this organized. So the more time we can give them, the better.
I feel good where this is at.
Does anyone feel like we need to discuss anything else? Then I will close this portion of our meeting, our workshop, and we can adjourn. We can come together again at 4 o'clock for Thompson Springs. Last time I found that if I stayed on, I still had to go out and re-enter, so I'm going to just leave because it didn't work. So we'll see you guys at 4.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Chris.